Your baby is staring at you right now. And the question most parents never think to ask is, what are they actually seeing? Not just the blur of your face, not just the sound of your voice. What are they thinking? For most of human history, we assumed the answer was not much. Babies were considered by scientists, philosophers, and even pediatricians to be more or less blank slates. Passive, reactive, waiting to become a person. That assumption was wrong. And in the last 40 years, developmental psychology and infant neuroscience have quietly dismantled it, piece by piece, study by study, and replaced it with something far more astonishing. Your baby, from the moment they are born, and actually before, is already a psychological being, already forming impressions, already building an internal model of the world, already deciding on a neurological level whether the world is safe or dangerous, whether people are reliable or unpredictable, whether you, specifically you, are someone they can count on. This video is about baby psychology. Not in the abstract, not in the clinical sense, but in the most practical sense there is. What is actually happening inside your baby's mind? Why their behavior means what it means? And what the science says you can do with that information. Because understanding your baby's psychology doesn't just make you a better parent. It shapes who your child becomes. Welcome to Raised by Science. Every video on this channel exists for one reason: to take the research that lives in academic journals and developmental psychology labs and bring it into the room where you're actually raising your child. Today, we're going inside baby psychology. We're going to cover 5 things. First, what psychologists actually mean when they talk about the infant mind, and why it matters that we got this so wrong for so long. Second, the psychology of infant behavior, what your baby's actions are actually communicating, decoded through the lens of science. Third, secure attachment, the single most researched concept in all of developmental psychology. What it is, how it forms, and what happens when it doesn't. Fourth, the emotional world of the baby, including research that will change how you think about crying, facial expressions, and what your baby is registering when you walk out of the room. And fifth, what all of this means for what you actually do tomorrow morning. This is not opinion. Everything we're covering today comes from peer-reviewed research in infant neuroscience, developmental psychology, and attachment science, fields built by researchers like John Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth, Daniel Stern, Alison Gopnik, and Andrew Meltzoff. Let's start at the beginning. For most of Western history, infants were considered pre-psychological. The philosopher John Locke described the newborn mind as a tabula rasa, a blank slate. William James, the father of American psychology, famously called the infant's experience a blooming, buzzing confusion. Even into the 20th century, the dominant assumption in both psychology and medicine was that babies couldn't think, couldn't feel in any meaningful sense, and certainly couldn't remember. Then, researchers started actually studying them. And what they found overturned nearly everything. The clearest early evidence came from a deceptively simple experiment. Researchers showed newborns, babies just hours old, 2 faces side by side, one with normal features, one with the same features scrambled. Newborns consistently looked longer at the normal face. They weren't just seeing shapes, they were already parsing the world for meaning, specifically for the shape of a human face. This was baby psychology operating from the first hours of life. Further research revealed even more.
By 2 months, infants recognize their mother's face from a stranger's. By 3 months, they can detect emotional expressions, distinguishing happy from sad, engaged from withdrawn.
By 5 months, they show the beginnings of a sense of fairness, preferring characters who help others over those who hinder them. By 9 months, they follow gaze, understanding that other people are looking at things, meaning other people have minds directed at things. This last ability, called joint attention, is one of the foundations of human psychology. It is the beginning of understanding that other minds exist, and it emerges reliably in the second half of the first year. The researcher Alison Gopnik at UC Berkeley summarizes this best. She describes the infant brain as not an empty vessel waiting to be filled, but rather something closer to a lantern, broadly aware, taking in everything, building a model of the world with an intensity that adult minds simply cannot match. Your baby, right now, is doing psychology, continuously. The question is what their psychology is learning from the environment you're providing. The behavior of infants is not random. It is not meaningless, and it is not simply biological reflex, though some of it is. Every behavior your baby produces is communication. The challenge is that most parents are never taught the translation. Let's go through the key behaviors and what the research tells us they actually mean. Crying is the most obvious one, and also the most misunderstood. Most parents know that crying signals distress, but research by Ronald Barr at the University of British Columbia revealed something important. Crying follows a universal developmental curve. It increases from birth, peaks at around 6 to 8 weeks, and then naturally declines, regardless of what parents do. This peak is not a reflection of bad parenting. It is a reflection of normal neurological development. The cry curve exists in every culture studied, across all parenting practices. But crying is also more nuanced than most parents realize. Research shows that infants produce acoustically different cries for different states: hunger, pain, overstimulation, and what researchers call a basic cry that simply signals the need for contact and regulation. Over time, experienced parents learn to distinguish these, not because they are extraordinary, but because the human brain is specifically wired to respond to and differentiate infant vocalizations. Gaze aversion, when a baby turns their face away from you mid-interaction, is often interpreted by parents as rejection or disinterest. The research says otherwise. Gaze aversion is a self-regulation tool. The infant's developing nervous system becomes overstimulated by direct face-to-face interaction and needs a brief break to reset. When your baby looks away, they are not rejecting you. They are regulating. The correct response, supported by research, is to slow down, reduce stimulation, and wait. The baby will return. The social smile, which emerges typically at 6 to 8 weeks, is one of the most significant moments in early infant psychology. Before this point, smiles are largely reflexive. After it, the social smile is a genuine response to a person. Research shows this milestone marks the beginning of what developmental psychologists call contingent interaction. The baby learning that their behavior produces predictable responses from another person. This is the beginning of social psychology. Stranger anxiety, usually appearing between 7 and 12 months, is often distressing for parents because it seems to emerge suddenly. A baby who was happy with grandparents at 3 months is now inconsolable with them at 9 months. Research explains this precisely. Stranger anxiety appears when the infant's memory systems and object permanence are sufficiently developed to clearly distinguish familiar from unfamiliar faces. It is, in fact, a sign of healthy cognitive and social development. The infant is showing they have a clear attachment figure and that they know the difference between that person and a stranger. Anxiety about strangers means they understand what a safe person is. Reaching and pointing, which emerge toward the end of the first year, mark another psychological milestone. Pointing, in particular, is a behavior almost unique to humans. When a baby points at something, they are not just expressing want. Research by Michael Tomasello at the Max Planck Institute shows they are sharing attention, doing what he calls declarative pointing, essentially saying, "Look at this thing. I want you to see what I see." This is early psychology of shared experience. It is the beginning of communication for its own sake, rather than just for getting needs met. Understanding these behaviors changes the experience of early parenthood. The crying, the gaze aversion, the stranger anxiety, none of it means something is wrong. It means your baby's psychology is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. If there is one concept in all of developmental psychology that has been studied more thoroughly, tested more rigorously, and replicated across more cultures than any other, it is secure attachment. The framework begins with John Bowlby. Bowlby was a British psychiatrist working in the mid-20th century, and his early work focused on something that was almost too painful to look at directly. What happens to children who are deprived of close, consistent caregiving relationships? Working with children who had been separated from parents during the Second World War, Bowlby observed patterns of distress, detachment, and later emotional difficulty that couldn't be explained by the dominant theories of the time. His conclusion, which took decades to gain full acceptance, was that the need for a close, consistent attachment relationship is not a luxury or a product of learned behavior. It is a biological drive, as fundamental as hunger or thirst. He called this the attachment behavioral system, and he argued it evolved in humans because proximity to a protective caregiver was essential for infant survival. This sounds obvious today. At the time, it was revolutionary. The next leap came from Mary Ainsworth, a developmental psychologist who had worked with Bowlby and wanted to study attachment not in conditions of deprivation, but in ordinary families. She developed an experimental procedure called the strange situation, a structured observation in which a toddler was briefly separated from their caregiver and the reunion behavior was carefully observed. What Ainsworth found was that children fell into distinct patterns. Some children, when the caregiver returned, were immediately comforted. They moved toward the caregiver, sought contact, settled, and returned to play. These children Ainsworth called securely attached. Others showed very different responses. Some seemed almost indifferent when the caregiver left and continued to be distant when they returned, as if they had already learned not to expect comfort from that direction. Ainsworth called these children avoidantly attached. Others were distressed beyond proportion, unable to settle even with the caregiver present, seeming simultaneously to want and resist contact. These were anxiously attached. A fourth category was later identified by researcher Mary Main: children whose behavior seemed disorganized, showing fear of the very person they needed for comfort. This disorganized attachment pattern was associated with the most significant later difficulties. The implications of these patterns have been studied for decades. Securely attached infants, compared to insecurely attached ones,
show measurably better emotional regulation in toddlerhood, greater resilience under stress, more positive peer relationships in preschool, better academic performance in early school years, lower rates of anxiety and depression in adolescence. These are not small effects. They run through the lifespan. Crucially, secure attachment is not caused by the absence of difficulty. Parents of securely attached children are not calm all the time. They are not perfect. The research consistently shows that what predicts secure attachment is what researchers call sensitive responsiveness, the caregiver's ability to notice the infant's signals and respond in a way that is timely, appropriate, and warm. Not perfect, not constant, responsive.
Edtronic's research, which the channel covered in a previous video, showed this clearly. The still face experiment demonstrated that brief unresponsiveness causes measurable distress. But it also demonstrated that repair, returning to warm, responsive interaction after a disruption, is itself a powerful force. Rupture and repair. That is the mechanism through which secure attachment is built. The research on secure attachment in babies is some of the most hopeful in all of developmental science, because it consistently shows that the most important variable is not what you have, not where you live, not how educated you are. The most important variable is how reliably you show up in moments of distress, of play, of ordinary daily contact, and respond to what you see. Most parents are already doing more of this than they realize.
Understanding baby psychology also means understanding where things can go off track and how to recognize it. The most significant risk factor in early infant psychology is not any single behavior or event. It is what researchers call chronic unresponsiveness, a pattern over time in which the infant's signals are consistently missed, misread, or ignored. This doesn't mean a parent who is tired and distracted some days. It doesn't mean a parent who misses cues or misreads cries. Those experiences are universal, and research shows babies are remarkably resilient to ordinary inconsistency. What creates lasting psychological difficulty is a prolonged absence of contingent, responsive interaction. And this is associated with specific risk factors: postpartum depression, severe stress, chronic poverty, trauma history, and social isolation.
Postpartum depression deserves particular attention because of how invisible it can be. Research estimates that between 10 and 20% of new mothers experience clinically significant postpartum depression, and a meaningful percentage of fathers as well. Depression does not make someone a bad parent, but it does, neurologically, reduce the ability to read infant signals accurately. And the research on this is clear. Infants of depressed parents show measurable differences in their own stress regulation systems. This is not a judgment. It is science pointing directly at something that can be treated. Postpartum depression responds well to intervention. The right moment to seek support is not when things feel unbearable. It is as early as possible.
The other area worth naming is overstimulation. Modern parenting culture, with its educational toys, screen time debates, endless stimulation, sometimes loses sight of the fact that the infant nervous system has a limited capacity for input. Babies who are consistently overstimulated without adequate quiet time, regulation time, and calm face-to-face connection show signs of heightened stress responses, more gaze aversion, more inconsolable crying, more difficulty settling. The irony is that the most developmentally powerful thing you can offer your baby costs nothing.
The irony is that the most developmentally powerful thing you can offer your baby costs nothing and requires no equipment. It is your face, your voice, your attention. Slow, unhurried, and responsive. Baby psychology is not complicated to support, but it does require presence.
So, given everything the science tells us about baby psychology, what does this actually look like in practice? Here are 5 things grounded in the research. 1. Narrate what you're doing. Research on early language and social development shows that babies don't just need to hear language. They need to hear language directed at them, in response to them, about them. When you narrate, "I can see you're tired. Let's get you to sleep." Or, "You're looking at that light. You find that interesting." You are doing 2 things simultaneously. You are building language foundations, and you are modeling attunement. You are showing your baby that their internal states are visible, nameable, and worth responding to. This is the beginning of emotional literacy.
2. Follow their gaze. When your baby looks at something, look at it with them. This simple act, following the infant's attention rather than redirecting it, supports the development of joint attention, which research has linked to later language acquisition, social cognition, and theory of mind. You don't have to make it complicated. Just notice what they're looking at and look at it too. Sometimes say what it is. 3. Let there be pauses. Face-to-face interaction with infants should have a rhythm: stimulus and response, action and pause. Many well-meaning parents fill every moment with sound, motion, and stimulation. But research on infant communication shows that the pauses are where the baby does their work, where they process, respond, and develop their own communicative turn-taking. Slowing down is not being boring. It is being responsive. 4. Practice repair, not perfection. Edtronics research established this firmly. The goal of early parenting is not to never disrupt the connection. It is to re-establish it consistently when it breaks. You will lose patience. You will miss cues. You will have days where you are simply not fully present. What matters is that you come back with warmth, with attention, with responsiveness. Research shows that the experience of repair, of rupture followed by reconnection, actively builds the infant's stress regulation capacity. It teaches them that difficult emotional states are temporary and manageable. 5. Take postpartum mental health seriously. If you are struggling with depression, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, exhaustion beyond the ordinary, that is not a character flaw. It is a medical event. And the research is unambiguous that treating it as early as possible protects not just you, but the relationship you are building with your baby. Seeking help is an act of parenting. Baby psychology is, in the end, a hopeful field. Not because it tells us everything is fine. Some things are not fine. Some babies are struggling, and some parents are struggling. And the research is honest about that. It's hopeful because of what it tells us about what actually matters. Not the toys, not the schedule, not the educational videos or the flashcards or the perfectly curated routines. What matters, what the research across 70 years of serious study consistently identifies as the foundation of healthy psychological development, is the relationship, the warmth, the responsiveness, the willingness to show up, read the signals, make repairs, and keep showing up. Your baby's psychology is being built right now, in ordinary moments, in the feeding, the eye contact, the response to the cry at 2 a.m. None of those moments feel like science, but every one of them is. If this video helped you understand your baby a little more clearly, subscribe to Raised by Science. New videos every week, always rooted in the research, always built for parents who want to understand the science behind the human beings they're raising. And if you have a question, a topic you'd like covered, or a study you'd like us to look at, drop it in the comments. We read every single one. See you in the next video.